I think having the right team internally is a secret that not very many people talk about.
So I'm excited to continue our conversation, now hearing a bit more about your journey. As a tech leader, I'm sure there's a lot of lessons learned for you. Tell me though, how did you get to where you are today? What's your story?
I have an unusual story where my parents were tech entrepreneurs. My mom is a computer scientist. My dad has been a quintessential businessman. And I had my first entrepreneur experience in sixth grade, right from my home dining table. And that was where my parents started their company when I was in sixth grade, and I learned so much by just living with them. Um, the hard work, the perseverance, the problem solving, the ability and the grit to sort of wake up every morning and be still enthusiastic about all the problems that are on your plate and to keep, scratching away at the problem and figuring it out. I think that's the DNA. That's the DNA of like most successful entrepreneurial mindset. It's not about people who are just want to make money. It's the mindset of being entrepreneurial, the mindset of saying, I'm going to fix something. I'm going to figure out this problem. That's the mindset of most successful entrepreneurs.
What did it take to say, all right, I'm gonna found my own business and get that off the ground? What was it like to get funding and get it started?
So the number one thing about building a business is to find the right sort of co-founder. And I can tell you that my co-founder, Michael Berner, and I, both of us, he's the CEO and he had built a business before. So he knew how to use the ropes of how to go about pitching the business and how to get the funding from the company, from investors. And I learned a lot from him on how this is done. I have to tell you, my experience as an entrepreneur in a country where there were no investors. It was a time in the 80s when there was nothing. I didn't even know what a VC was at that time. And it was practically a different kind of entrepreneurship. The entrepreneurship that we're talking about in the US, where we try to raise funds and then we build the business, is a very different kind of entrepreneurship, which you'll be very impressed that it doesn't happen in many third world countries. And so the beauty of me able to learn that with Michael was actually quite eye-opening, and also just the ability to explain our story, the ability to give the perspective of what we think we want to solve. Because remember, we weren't talking about building some crazy robot that changes how you do things and changing your productivity in your house. We were talking about changing products and services that people already use all the time. It is not the most sexy story in a way, but it is the most important, in my eyes, the most important place where we can actually help consumers. And so taking that and dovetailing it into a exciting business opportunity for investors to be interested in was a really hard thing to do. And learning that is amazing. So
getting the initial story there and being able to get the funding, that's one piece. But then to build out the MVP, get the first few customers on board, that's a whole nother piece. What can you share as far as tactics that you found have worked just in the initial stages to get the first couple customers, both on your consumer side of the product as well as the trend side, the B2B side? How do you get those first couple customers?
I think having the right team internally is a secret that not very many people talk about. We have always looked for, as a team, we've always looked for people that we would like to work with. And again, that that ability, the grit, the ability to solve problems. We never looked at as people that we joined in the early days, the people that joined our team were all kind of mini entrepreneurial to kind of met, and that's the skill, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for people who will say, I am scrappy, I'm hardworking, I will learn new things, I am not coming with some kind of like, I know how to do things, chip on my shoulder, I'm ready to learn, I'm rolling up my sleeves. That's our team. And that team actually changes everything. We weren't email experts when we started, but we saw that people, when we built the first product, which was an AI product, helping people to do tiny repetitive tasks. So that's how we started up. We said that consumers are doing repetitive tasks all the time. That's silly. We should be able to apply AI to it and fix it. So we built an app, was an assistant. It was a pure assistant app. We decided that that app is great, but we got a lot of loyal users. But then we found out people don't want to open one more app to then be able to do one more thing. So we have to go pick something that already exists in the sort of the everyday use of a consumer and be able to then from there help them. And so we picked email. From that point onwards, we built the team that could understand. We applied our AI technologies on top of the email problem statement. We we understood how the email UX works and what is broken. Do we need to change a brand new email UX, or is there some other things that need to be broken? That's how we came up with the whole idea that people just don't want that many emails per year. It's kind of the funny thing where you go, I'm building an email product, but I'm going to fix something where people just don't get that many emails, which is actually a great thing to do. And if the more and more successful products that you hear about, like Instagram and others, where they took away features before they released the final product, which is great. I think you understand the value of simplicity. And that actually drives into even our on-mail product. The simplicity of that web product that we just launched is so inspiring that people are actually just waiting for all the rest of the features and the products to come out for on-mail. We're just in public beta, but the admiration and love we're getting for on-mail is just unbelievable. So that tells you simplicity wins, you know?
Yeah. Two big takeaways from it. One is you're when you develop an initial product, you be careful you're not creating something that solves a problem, but then they have to go somewhere to do it. Is really finding a place that they're already going in and doing something and building a way to do that faster, easier, simpler. And then when you're working on it, make sure you're simplifying, reducing versus adding more or complicating it. Two very, very powerful ideas.
Thank you.
This team, obviously a powerful point of developing the right team for you to grow. And maybe the initial stage is a certain kind of team. And then once you narrow down and knowing where you want to go, getting more team members on that. What's your team like today? How many folks do you have?
We have about 100 people, 100 plus. And our team has been growing very, very carefully. So as a startup, you would think, you go out, you get the funding, you start hiring. It's not that way, actually. Our team stayed at like mid 40s for a long time. And then when we built the research side of the product, of the business, we built out the rest of the team, which is we needed the B2B salespeople, we needed the data scientists and the data analysts. And that's when we built the MVP for that area, because every time we have built something that we can produce and provide to a consumer or a business, we've always started small. We've always tested the market to say, is this something viable? Is this something we can provide to a person that would pay us for it or find value in it? And that's the important part of any MVP, is you build something and you find out if somebody, and I forget who said this, but there's this lecturer, the blogger, he says, if somebody will pay you $1 for that idea, you've got something there. That's when you go execute that idea and go build the product out. And that's what we are very, very careful in how we spend our money and how we spend our funds, how we grow our teams. But, to your point, the first product, listening to customers, our first few hires were very interesting. From our experience from the past, we didn't hire just engineers. our first set of team players were also customer service people, even though we didn't even have that many customers. We hired a customer service person to actually help us create the messaging around the product such a way that we are able to, talk to the consumers who are going to use our products. We didn't want our engineering team to talk. We wanted our customer support team. So our customer support team actually initial days helped us create the information that was being provided to the customers.
A nice feedback loop there, then I can imagine.
A nice feedback loop, because then when they started talking to customers, they knew what they were talking about. They weren't just brought on because all of a sudden we have a few 100,000 customers. They were brought on much earlier, so they're part of the team. And that makes them feel ownership for it, and their ability to help the customers was so much. In fact, I think our apps are like 5-star apps in both app stores. Every other review in that app store talks about how good our customer support is, which again, large companies cannot provide this kind of customer support. Mm-hmm. So these are the areas that we kind of thought through to say, how do we make our MVP successful to then be able to take this product further?
I find it interesting, your business model, because you're both B2C as well as B2B. How do you manage that both marketing ability and keeping the conversations and the communications effective in both spaces?
Inherently, many people ask us this question, and I do a lot of interviews for even new employees coming on board. And they ask us this question: are we a research company or are we a consumer company? Is the consumer company built for the research side, or is the research side built for the consumer side? And I think we are actually looking at the companies, both industries at the same time. And we are revolutionizing how both industries have operated over hundreds of years. Well, not email, but the research side has been hundreds of years. And so I talk a lot about the email side, but what about the research side? And then there is a very nice dovetail of why our consumers should understand why research is privacy focused and a better way to use a product that's free. And our research side should understand why getting this data from a source, or getting the research from a source that understands and has a pact of privacy with that source. So the customers that we work with, they're large Fortune 50 customers. They're really, really large companies. The reason they work with somebody that like Edison Software, that's not not like one of those large research companies that we all know of, is because they believe that we actually have a moral obligation. We are conscious of our pact with our consumers. And that's why our product and the speed, we can actually do a lot of things at the speed that they require. So let's say they say tomorrow, can you give us a red shirt instead of a blue shirt? And let's say we were only capturing shirts before that. It is really easy for our AI to then go and train it to go and do the red shirts to blue shirts, and then break out red shirts to blue shirts, and then be able to provide that. It has not been that easy for these customers to get that kind of. So see how this whole business is actually, yes, we are marketing two different businesses, but at a fabric level, the two businesses are really connected together.
It really stood out there, your statement of those Fortune 50s. It stands out to them, your mission statement effectively, to the consumers of how you're approaching this could already attract them. And of course, then the speed of execution of that relationship you have, an option you have with the consumers, allows them faster access to the data and changing it, all while being very privacy oriented. It's an interesting take on that.
And not everybody who uses, right, Alex, not everybody who uses my product on the consumer side agrees to using their data for the research side. And we're okay with that. Just like I said, it's like a complete, sometimes it's less than 50%. And it's okay because remember, statistics, when you are doing aggregate research, the statistics part of it does not require 100% in the denominator. It can be much less than 100%. Like if you go look at some of the research graphs that you looked at, like statistical research graphs that talk about who's going to vote for somebody. If you look at how many people, like the cohort that they asked the question to is less than a few thousand. It's in the hundreds sometimes. And so that's all you really need to say. The trend of blue shirts versus red shirts, and checking with only a few thousand people to see if they like blue shirts or red shirts is enough of a trend for a consumer company that's building red shirts versus blue shirts. Which one are they going to build more next year, right? That's the type of stuff is enough that's the privacy focused research that we're talking about.
Two last quick questions for you. One, is there any books or audiobooks or podcasts or journals or places you've been reading and have found interesting that you could share?
You know, my favorite is I have two radio shows. I'm a big NPR listener, and I have two favorite shows. One is Marketplace, and I love Kyra's Doll. And the second one is Terry Gross, and I love because she keeps me connected to the real world, and I love her Fresh Air show. So those are my two favorite things that I listen to. Sorry. And on the reading side, I just read so much stuff at work that after some time I think I'm kind of done with reading. But there are days when I feel like I should pick up a book. I have done a couple audiobooks when I'm traveling, but now I don't travel anymore for work or any of it. So I have kind of let that part go a little bit, but it'll come back. So yeah, those are my two best podcasts, radio shows that I listen to, especially when I'm walking.
Last question for you. What kind of technology innovations do you predict we will see in the near term, the next year or so, and long term, 5-10 years?
I think near term, we're going to start seeing some really interesting automation on the roads. Driverless stuff. It's a near-term thing. Driverless deliveries, driverless stuff. It's going to be very, very interesting, and it's going to be near-term. I already know in Arizona that they're having a pilot go on where they're doing driverless taxis. I just can't believe. I'm waiting for a video. My brother lives in Phoenix. I told him I want a video now. That's really cool, and it's coming. I think we think it's far away, but it's not that far away. And for the long term, I think we're going to have a very interesting virtual AI experience blended into our entertainment, gaming, that's already there. I'm saying that will happen in our travel, so let's say I'm about to take a trip to Patagonia. I might almost do this trip virtually first and then go do it physically to get the most out of it. But that's like my very, very long term. Like you might almost think of a lot of things that will happen in like AI virtually in your house where you're like, just kind of like, I'm going to check this out. I'm going to check that out before I go physically do it. I think that's going to be sort of this long-term thing that's going to happen.
Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.